Hi there. I guess people would probably want to know a little bit about the Church of Nowhere in a bit more detail. So, this is the Church of Nowhere and the power of three. That is, three things that you can do in your life to align yourself to the Church of Nowhere. Now, as we know, the Church of Nowhere doesn't have any formal metaphysics, and instead it places an emphasis on ethical living and meditating. So in that sense, it's a bit more like Buddhism, except it doesn't have a Buddha or an arahat or higher masters, all that kind of stuff. It doesn't have any leaders or founders or temples or churches or anything like that. It just has a kind of like basic, ethical living kind of things to say, and just a couple of very simple things to say on meditation, which are basically to do with your own development as an individual, rather than your connection with your environment or with other sentient beings. But the ethical life is very important, and I won't cover antinatalism because that's kind of controversial and has already been covered. This thing about veganism, for example, eats plant-based food. And I always think, eat vegan doesn't mean to say to become a vegan or to adhere to veganism, okay? Because there are enough isms in the world and schisms amongst isms, and they form prisons, really. And also, you form an out group and an in group. So you have a vegan in group, and then you have everybody else who's outside the in group, who's the out group, and the out group tends to be hated or scorned or somehow thought of as inferior to the in group, which we really want to get away from because that ends in tears, doesn't it? Really, as we all know, looking at history and that in groups and out groups are really not a good idea. So I prefer to say eat vegan food, or actually not even vegan, eat plant-based food where you can. Um, and I just sort of three things here, the power of three, which is three things you can actually do. You can no longer eat beef or beef products or beef byproducts. Okay, because beef basically forms the majority of herds in the West, beef herds and dairy herds, you see, and don't have any dairy products, that is to say, cow dairy products anyway, because the meat industry and the dairy industry are inseparable from an ethical point of view, or from they're both unethical, and they're also the beef industry and the dairy industry, the cow dairy industry, are mostly responsible for the buildup of CO2 in the atmosphere. So you basically go vegan as much as you can. Definitely don't eat beef or beef products or beef byproducts, and don't have dairy products from the cow. Okay, if you can help it. Don't wear any fur or leather. Basically, so these are three things that you can do. Because obviously leather is part of the dairy and the meat industry. Very much entwined with it, of course. And also people look at your feet, and they say, you wear leather shoes, so how can you say you've given up eating meat when you wear leather shoes? So, but it's true, because the tanning industry, from whatever source of hide, is definitely part of the meat industry. But notice I'm just saying, give up three things. I'm not saying give up all things to do with animals. If you eat fish or honey or other things like that, this is only the power of three I'm talking about here. I'm not sort of saying eat vegan food where you can and when you can. But obviously, if you go abroad to somewhere like Egypt and you go to a poor person's house and they give you chicken to eat, you should eat it, because they're poor people and they've killed their only chicken for you. So you can't really sort of turn around and say, I belong to the Church of Nowhere and I'm a vegan and I can't eat your chicken. So eat it and be grateful for the food that you're given, like, you know what I mean? And also realize that people are human beings. And I don't want veganism to become an anti-human campaign, or have a kind of nasty anti-human atmosphere building up around it, because veganism can lead to sort of feelings of being anti-human, and so can anti-natalism for that matter. And it's not that we're anti-human. The human race, is flawed, same as all the other races which exploit, manipulate, and predate. And other sentient beings all over the universe do the same thing. So, you end up being anti everything, anti life itself. So don't be anti-human. Don't be veganistic, or adhere to veganism exactly. Just eat vegan food and don't wear leather, and definitely don't have dairy products, and definitely don't eat beef anyway. So those are the three things that you can just give up in order to align yourself to the Church of Nowhere, should you wish to do so. And you'll also be doing good things for the environment at the same time. Of course, people say, what about plastics? They're not good for the environment. Well, no, they're not. But the tanning industry also makes its fair share of pollutants, which they chuck into the river anyway. So the tanning industry is not completely blameless with respect to pollution either. Though I admit that petrochemicals are probably worse in that aspect than the tanning industry itself. Anyway, so that's the power of three on the vegan side of things. On the minimal living, which is probably what a lot of people do now, try to be green and recycle and go by bicycle and, try and cut your own personal carbon footprint as much as you can. I think everybody is that's kind of mainstream now, that kind of thinking. But also, I think you need to take three things that you normally buy: animal, vegetable, and mineral. And you need to kind of look into exactly where they've come from, and the process of their production, and who makes what, and who owns which company that makes the product. That's kind of a useful thing to do. And you may decide, for example, that you don't wish to go on buying a certain product, or avail yourself of a certain service because it is unethical. And you've done your research and you found out that there are some things, there's a dark side to the production of whatever it is that you normally buy. And then what you need to do then is write a polite letter to the manufacturer or supplier of whatever it is that you normally buy that you found out to be unethical, and just tell them that you're aware of the unethical side of their business or their product or their supply or their delivery of something, and that that you're aware of it, and you really are not you don't really feel like buying any more of their product, because it just depresses you that people are kept in cruelty, or animals, or whatever. There's something unethical you found out, and it depresses you, and you don't really want to, consume any more of their product because you're depressed about how it's produced. And you may think, oh, that's only one letter, but for every one letter, there's 10 people that share your same opinion. And if they get 10 letters, that's 100 people, and 100, it builds up exponentially. And then it becomes rather frightening because, if 100 people are no longer going to buy your product, and you used to be what they call a returning customer. So you always went to this particular supplier or a particular manufacturer as a returning customer, and then you're not going to do that. So that's kind of bad for cash flow, and bad for income, and bad for regular revenue, you see. And if they get like 10 people saying they're not going to buy the product, or 100 people, that's when it begins to get economically rather hurtful on the particular company. And that's your consumer power. That's exercising your consumer power. You're not breaking any laws. You're exercising your right not to buy something. And you're telling the person why you're not buying it. So that's a very good thing to do. But if you're going to not buy something, boycott something for any reason, do make sure that you communicate your reasons why to the relevant party, you see. So that's something you can do, the power of three: animal, vegetable, mineral. Take three things that you normally buy, and find out about their ethnic. Well, that's a Freudian slip there. Their ethical basis, if you like, their ethical nature, if you like. Um, and so that's kind of important to do as part of this minimal living. And uh, so that's really part of the ethical side of things for the Church of Nowhere. And the other side of Church of Nowhere is meditation. And there's actually four parts to this, really. And there's rather a nice contemplation that God, in quotation marks, is really the uniqueness. And this uniqueness is everywhere. So everywhere, every sentient being, every human being, every intelligent being, every living being has a uniqueness, a unique pattern on life, and that's the godness in them, the fact that they're unique, and yet at the same time we're all just packets of energy spinning around, and that's also part of our godness, if you like, that we're just energy on one hand, and yet we're unique on the other. So on one hand, we have moral ontology, what they call moral ontology. That means that we have a moral basis for existence, that we should be respected, our lives should be respected, our rights should be respected, our happiness, our well-being should be respected, and respected not just of our rights or our well-being, but the well-being of as many sentient beings as we can include, that necessity allows. And of course, you're going to have a big argument about necessity and what is necessary and what is not necessary, such as with vivisection and things like that. You're going to have a big argument, well, that's necessary, so that's a necessary evil. But you've got to be careful of necessary evils, because they do mount up, and in the end, you sell your soul to necessary evil, and you end up justifying all loads of terrible things on the basis of necessity. So be very careful how you define necessity. And part of minimal living, in fact, is to look at the difference between things that are necessary for your life and your quality of life, and things that are not necessary for your quality of life. And you should reject the things that are not necessary, study that very carefully, what is necessary, and only go for the things that are necessary for your quality of life or your actual survival. So that's a contemplation that you can do. It'll fill your mind with that sort of contemplation. But the other thing, of course, is mindfulness itself. And that's kind of that's where you just just sit comfortably somewhere, and basically you're just saying hello to your thoughts as they come up, and goodbye. So you're just aware of your thoughts, and they kind of float up. They kind of rise up like a wave, and then they die away. And you sort of have to say consciously goodbye thoughts, and you pack them on a little bus and send them on their way, which is something I don't really do a lot of, but it's actually quite good. But I've got so many thoughts, you see, that I can't pack them all up in a vehicle and send them on their way. Otherwise, I'll be there all day, kind of thing. So it's a bit difficult for me to do that. So I prefer mantra, where you fill your mind with like the Om, the Pranava, which is the Om sound, or it could be the Hu sound, or it could be Mu, or whatever. It could be the Jesus prayer, or it could be the Rosary, and or the Lord's Prayer. And you just repeat this over and over and over again until your mind becomes totally absorbed in the mantra, which could be a vibration, or it could be words, or whatever, words that mean something. And mantras should mean something, actually. I did read somewhere that you shouldn't chant something that you don't know what the meaning of is. You should know what it means, right? As part of your meditation. And then finally, the sort of easiest way is just to become a breath awareness, where you just take in a breath for 4, hold your breath for 2, breathe out for 4, and hold your breath for 2 on the out breath, and you just do that for a little bit, making real sure that you don't tire yourself in any shape or form. Don't overdo it. Start off really doing about a minute or even 30 seconds of it, if that's all you can manage, and build up really slowly over many weeks, months, and even years, and don't overdo it. That's called breath awareness or breath control, pranayama. And you just, you get good at that. And that will do a lot of good for your physiology and the way and your biochemistry. And your mindfulness will do a lot for your psychology and your everyday coping with stress. And the mantra will connect you to a feeling of connectedness to all things, apparently, which is nice, a nice experience, nice peak experience, numinous experience. And then contemplating the uniqueness of every being in the universe, which is a nice contemplation to take on board as well. So that's basically the two things about the Church of Nowhere: meditation and ethical living. And you don't really need gods and founders and bishops and Buddhas to be and Maitreya's and all this kind of stuff and all these sort of superstitious kind of things that go on, arahats and higher masters and all this. You don't need all that kind of stuff at all. You just need to meditate. Choose a method of meditation, or perhaps somewhat in some way combine all three methods of meditation. So lead a life of meditation and lead an ethical life, and contemplate the fact that there is no God, because God is everywhere, and everything and everywhere is unique unto itself, which is what God actually just means, really. It's this sort of feeling of uniqueness and the fact that something is just there, and it needn't be there. It's just there, and you can't sort of stop thinking about it or looking at it. It's there because it's there. And being ethical is you don't be ethical for a reward in heaven or to escape punishment in hell. You're just ethical for the sake of being ethical. So that's just the basic tenets of what the Church of Nowhere, which is sometimes also called the Church of Nothing as well, which I've discussed before. So I just hope that kind of helps, really, and have good fun in this church, and enjoy yourself in it. Don't be too Puritan about everything, but don't be too extreme either.